So welcome to another board game review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
Today we're taking a look at a brand new board game from Fort Circle Games called Votes for Women. And by brand new, I mean it's a few months old.
Yeah.
When did this come out?
I think they fulfilled it off
bit,
of
right?
Kickstarter like November, December.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was
So right
kind
near
of
the end of the year, yeah.
But it was like a 2022 release. We finally got round to it.
And it went to Kickstarter, I believe, in, I want to say it was 2020, give or
Really?
take. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I lived in my current house, and we've been there for 4 years, so...
Okay. I didn't know it was quite that
20-ish.
far away.
Yeah.
So, this is generally speaking, this is a two-player game, and it is a card game, and you can either play competitively against and for women's suffrage, or you can play it cooperatively against an opposition bot.
The Oppo bot.
And there's a couple options. I think you can play it solo against the Oppo bot, and then you can play it like 3 and 4 player with kind of splitting up some teams and things like that. But
we didn't play it in
no, we played it 2-player, and I would, generally speaking, this is probably most likely going to be played as a 2-player most often. So this is a game.
Although I'm not sure that's correct. I just don't know how many people are going to want to play the opposition, right?
Well,
It's one of those concepts that people will struggle with.
But the 2-player part of it is that you both play factions
when you do the cooperative
against
against
the bot. So
I get what you're saying now.
Now, whether or not competitive's the highest, but 2 players probably the count that's going to see the most play. So this game is designed by Tori Brown. I believe this might be her debut design.
So, yeah.
And we played this, and it was very, very, very enjoyable.
I mean, I had a blast playing the game. There's nothing not to like here.
Yes.
It's educational, it's engaging, it's supremely interesting, and I mean, I had fun with it, right? I had fun trying to understand the mechanics.
Yes.
Trying to understand I needed to do what I needed to do as the suffragist, and you also had to learn what you had to do as the opposition, and it was very enjoyable. Now, there were moments of frustration because this can be a very mean-spirited style game.
Especially competitively.
Yeah, it was brutal, but very fun.
Yeah, and
interesting.
This is a card-driven game. Got a hand of cards, you can play them for events, or you can use them to do a little menu of options that you have, like campaigning, or lobbying, or organizing, things like that.
And that is a very interesting thing. A lot of card-driven games do that. You know, you have the event. A lot of times you have a certain amount of op points, 1 or 2 or 3.
A lot of games have that. This doesn't.
This does not have that, but you can discard those cards rather than taking the event to do some of those very key... I mean, as the suffragist, if you're not doing lobbying those first 3 to 4 turns, because if you don't get the 15th Amendment passed by Congress by...
19th Amendment, right?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Wait, it's the 15th...
No, that was the 15th was a card.
That allowed me to do that. It's the 19th Amendment is the...
Yes.
But it's so interesting because you've got to be doing that, and it's very challenging.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
So, the suffragists have to get the 19th Amendment passed by Congress, then it goes out to the states, and then you have to get it ratified by 36 states.
Yeah.
And they have to do all of that. Whereas the opposition player is just trying to prevent all of that from happening.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to just stymie you or to stop you. So that's why it works well with a bot, and that's great. Yeah. But as a 2-player game, we play a lot of card-driven games.
Yep.
And when we're not playing war games, a lot of board games that we play look like this. I think about things like 1960 Making of a President, Twilight Struggle, all sorts of different CDGs where it's about area influence, area control for some wider goal, right?
And it's also, I'm playing this card to put out 3 or 4 cubes, and then you play a card
to remove
those 3 or 4 cubes, or some other cubes.
Yeah,
and it's
a lot of the back and forth, fighting over things, trying to get an area to get a bonus to do something over here, right? This has all of those hallmarks that we enjoy. I think this was kind of right up our alley. But
and those games to me are just so interesting because you've got to figure out, 1, what you need to do, and then 2, how you need to do it.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, I need to figure out how to stop you. And I think in the game that we played, I didn't figure out how to stop you early enough, and you actually won.
Yeah, I had done enough damage early.
Yeah.
But I think what you said earlier is one of the coolest and most interesting parts of this game is figuring out the timing of when to focus on what.
Yeah.
So like do I try and rush, lobby Congress so that the amendment has passed, and then all I got to worry about is
The states to ratify
control.
it, yep.
But whilst you're rushing to do that, I'm just going to put all the negative rep out there possible.
Mm-hmm.
Or do you kind of hold off on that as long as possible, try to like dominate
Yeah.
the board, and then like rush the lobbying, which is very risky because if you don't get it passed, you lose.
Well, and the lobbying is very challenging, right? You're going to
Yes.
roll a d6 based on the number of
Campaigners.
that you have on the board. The suffragists are going to have anywhere from 2 to 4 at the most.
But I think the lobbying gets easier the longer the game goes on.
Oh, no doubt. When you're rolling 4 dice, needing a 6.
But that's the push your luck risk element,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
And that was such a tantalizing part of the
Yep.
game of like,
Well, it's trying to balance that. It's trying to do that enough to
Yeah.
make progress while also putting out enough on the map so that you can ultimately win those states over when the time is right. So it's a balancing act.
which is very cool
Oh,
to
it's
like
very
mechanically do. That was enjoyable.
But the thing, this kind of a game, you're going to play it 3 to 4 times before you really get those nuances.
Yes.
And understand, okay, usually by turn 2, I have to have done this or accomplished this. If it's turn 2 and I haven't, it's not over, but I'm in for a world of hurt. And you got to be wise about that.
And I think about, and this is something that I think some people like or some people don't like. This is also a game that the more familiar you become with your deck, which is
doubt.
seeded by kind of times, because
It's early, mid, and then late.
yeah, it's the time frame of this game covers like almost 100 years. right?
1848 to 1920, so 72 years.
And so the more you learn that deck, right? We played this, and having played it to completion, it was like, okay, well, next time I know that like there's this card here and this card here in the late deck that are going to be very strong for lobbying. Or I'm like, cool, I've got lots of cards that play off of this southern strategy.
Yeah.
Or all sorts of different bits and pieces. And the more familiar you get to know those things, you can play with that knowledge a bit more of how you execute what you do on the board as well.
It's like with a game like Twilight Struggle. We love Twilight Struggle. I played it hundreds of times. I mean, I played it online against the very easy to beat anymore AI. But you learn that deck. You remember, okay, in the early, I really got to worry about this card, and this card is the Soviets. The rest of it, there's always that one card, I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's going to force you into nuclear war if it comes up at the wrong time.
Oh, the little missile envy.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a card in your hand and they discard something and that goes off, man, that's just a killer. So you become familiar with that.
Yes.
You start to realize, okay, I got to get this. This game is the same way. I remember early on, as I was struggling to get, the lobbying done in Congress, very challenging, by the way.
Yes.
You're rolling D6s and you need to roll a 6. If you roll 2 6s, you can get 2 in there. I never did that.
But good luck.
But when I got 3 and 4 people that I was rolling, man, that was a lot easier.
Yes.
So knowing that,
But you don't get those till very late.
you get those in the late game.
Which is great.
Yep.
The crescendo of the game is excellent.
There's a couple of auto put lobbying stuff in Congress in the early game. There's not much in the middle of it. But man, at the late game, there's 3 or so cards that it's add 2 or 3, and you got to know that. You've got to know that, okay, I'm still in it. And you've also got to know it as the opposition because you've got to be prepared.
Yeah, I had
to
a lot of cards early and middle that just removed those.
Oh, and that was so upsetting.
Or you'd roll and you'd need a 3 through 6 on a d6 to remove. This was very easy.
Yeah.
But then knowing what's in your cards when the strategy card comes up to fish through your deck for the thing that you want, knowing what you're looking for, you're like, okay, that's really important, I have to get that.
Yeah.
So when it comes up, you're like, cool, I gotta save my buttons for that.
Yeah.
But your buttons are a different currency that you use for all sorts of other things.
A very interesting part of the game,
Save for
the
that?
currency, yeah.
There's a really, really good mix of kind of layers of mechanics in this game.
Yeah.
Whilst being like a 6-page rulebook and it played very quickly.
Well, and we played this in 2 hours. My guess is once you understand it, you're going to play it in 90 minutes.
We played it in 2 hours with a half-hour reading the rules. Right.
And kind of trying to understand things.
Setting it up.
Yeah.
There's some symbols and figuring it out. But yeah, like, this would be a much quicker play next time.
Oh, yeah. The other thing I liked about the game, and you've kind of touched on it, but the strategies that you've got to understand, the blanket approach where I'm trying to get out something in everywhere, and you're trying to get out like key areas and kind of lock them down. Like you had the southern states locked down, and it was really hard for me to get in there and break that up, knowing that I might have played some of those other cards that removed.
Yeah.
I had some that were like, remove 6 cubes of red and no more than 2 per state. I was like, well, I could have devastated you there, but I didn't get the feel for that until it was kind of too late.
And then it also plays into where do you go to do your campaigning? Like,
campaigning
do
is very
you send
important.
a couple people down there and campaign early? Because
Yeah.
that can be very swingy if you get
Yep.
really good campaign rolls.
Well, and the campaigning is very interesting because you roll 1 dice per campaigner
yeah.
you have on the board. You, as the opposition, had 1 until
the
5
very,
or 6.
Yeah.
And then you finally got 2, and that was powerful for you.
Very strong.
But I had 2 to start the game, and I don't think I got my 3rd one till about turn 4.
I think we got our 3rd and my 2nd at the same turn.
Pretty. So it was 5 or 6 or 5. But having those out there and throwing 1 card down to roll 1 dice for each, and I was either rolling 6s or some of those cards allowed you to roll 8s.
It was, you normally roll a d4 and you
Right,
had to roll
I'm sorry.
a d6.
Yeah, they're 6-sided. They're 12-sided
12-sided,
dice,
yeah.
which is interesting. But it was just so fascinating because that is a superior tactic. Campaigning is really better than putting 1 or 2 out here and there, but it's expensive. You got to use your buttons to move your guys around. You don't have a lot of buttons.
And sometimes you roll like garbage. And
Well,
it's
yeah.
like, oh.
And that's why you got to have your buttons too. You got to have buttons not only to move your guys around, you also got to have buttons to re-roll those dice.
Yes.
And it's not just throw a button away and re-roll 1 die.
Gotta re-roll
It's
them
throw
all.
a button and you got to re-roll all. But when you're trying to roll either 6s for lobbying or 3s or 4s, that's okay. I rolled several 1s at one time, and I'm like, heck yeah, I'm throwing that away.
I do.
You know?
I do remember you rolled,
I rolled 3 dice, and it was two 1s and a 2.
you rolled 3 1s one time.
Yeah, maybe
That
it was 3
gross.
1s. It was terrible.
But when you had the d6s instead of d4s, and you rolled a 6 and a 1,
Yeah,
and you're like,
every time.
one of those is really good, and one of those is
garbage.
really bad. And
Because you could,
it was
it's
funny 'cause
very
you're like,
interesting.
I can't re-roll that.
Yeah, I think going back, campaigning would have been more of my early strategy, but I thought I did a good job of kind of doing the blanket, where I had 1 or 2 a lot of places. Because ultimately, in the end of the game, in the last, once the 15th Amendment card is played, that then, not played, but once you've lobbied and it moves to the states, where they approve the 19th Amendment. That card says 15th Amendment. I'm trying to remember what part that is. I just don't know historically.
Yeah, the 15th Amendment is something else, which other cards play off of.
Right. Yeah, it gets you 2 in there. So I used that to get 2 in there one time. Anyway, you've got to. I just like that you have to focus on so many different aspects. That you have to chase this rabbit down a hole for a
Yeah.
little bit. Then you got to chase this rabbit. Oh, and then you can start ignoring that rabbit, and you got to go after this one really hard. But you got to
felt
play
like
off
it
your
was
opponent too.
also not overwhelming in any real
Oh,
major
no,
way,
no,
right? Like,
no.
There's
Pretty-
cool layers to the game. There's all
Yeah.
these things to consider, and it does it like on the perfect, like, kind of balanced on a razor's edge
Mm-hmm.
of not having analysis paralysis. Because
Yeah.
there are a lot of games where one more layer of mechanic in here, or like one more layer of choice, and you'd be like, this game would take you 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, oh, what am I trying to do? Counting up all the numbers again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
It's reasonably easy to assess the state of the board at any given point.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And like, you also kind of get a feel of what you're trying to do, and you can get a feel of what your opponent's trying to do pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then it's, trying to counter that, but keep my plate spinning as well. And that's why it's to be very successful as a board game,
Yeah.
right? It's fun to play, but
Mm-hmm.
also not like insanely overwhelming. This
No.
is a very approachable game for a lot of people.
Like you said, it has 4 or 5 pages. It's not
Yeah.
a very thick rule book.
Like, the rules are like, you don't use half of this co-op and solo stuff.
So you're talking 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah, these are rules
Yeah,
one.
that's really it. 2.
Like, it's
Yep.
2 pages of rules,
Yep.
then some, details, and then the final voting. Like, it really is, like, the rules are nothing-y. And it was very good rule book.
Oh, yeah.
For, like, setup and learning everything, really easy.
The other thing I really liked about the game was the management of the buttons. That's a currency. It powers your rerolls and it powers your movements and
And you use them to bid on strategy cards.
which is I'm telling you, those strategy cards and the state cards
can be very strong.
very strong, and you've got to be in on those.
Yes.
I went a little too in on the state cards because you can only play 1 state card per round, and there's 6 rounds. So I think I had 7 of the cards.
You had
Or did I end up getting 8? I feel like I got a ton.
no. I think I
had 2 left.
I played. There's 9, and I think you had 6 of them, and I only ever had 3.
Okay.
But like, whilst
I ended up getting 2
because you
left.
didn't play 1 in round 1,
That's right, because I didn't get 1 in round 2.
and it's that thing where you can play. Like, yeah, you went hard on that, but you can only play a certain amount.
Yeah.
But you are denying them to me, and
Yes.
that does make a big difference as well.
Well, and going after them, the process of going after them is putting 4 cubes in those states. That's not a bad thing.
No,
I mean,
it's a big commitment.
It's a big commitment, but it's
Yes.
building towards that long-term game as well.
Yes.
But those are very powerful. They just allow you to do a lot of things. The strategy cards also very powerful.
Yeah, they just give you some more buttons, or put some guys out, or
Yeah.
remove some guys, or here's a special ability.
And it's
break
in
these
addition
rules.
to your 6 cards that you can play
Yeah.
per turn. So those were key. I think getting in on those are very important. And then finally, the production on this one is just, it's like knocked out of the chart, out of the park.
It really is. What I'll do is I will show you the components and show you how it works, so that you can bask in the glory of this production.
Beautiful.
And then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map, and this is the end of the game. But you can see map of the United States of America, and it's divided up both by these colorized regions, and then within those you have states, and it's all the states that you would expect. I think the only one not on here is Hawaii, because at the time, Alaska's not on here either, because they weren't states during the period of this game. Because it's from 1848 to 1920. So, what you're looking at is big old, do we have? Yeah, okay. Big old map, again, divided up. So you have a deck of cards for the suffragists, and you have a deck of cards for the opposition, and these cards are divided up by time. So there's middle cards, there's late cards, and there are early cards. And your deck will be seeded, so you have all the early ones, all the middle ones, all the late ones. And you're going to have a hand of 7 cards, and you're going to take impulses back and forth playing cards. So again, if you've played any kind of CDGs, you'll be very familiar with the flow of this game. So you have a hand of cards, and you're going to play either the event, or you're going to discard the card, and you're going to take one of 3 actions with it. And the point of this game is, we'll talk about it from a suffragist standpoint, because they're the kind of the proactive player in this game. They're the ones who have to force the game to go along. So the first thing that you're going to try to do is that you have to lobby Congress to get the 19th Amendment signed in the first place, or like passed. And so what's going to happen is you're going to try to lobby, and every time you successfully lobby, you get one of these cylinders on here. If you fill up all 6, the bill is then passed. And then once it's passed, it goes to all of the different states for ratification or rejection. Every state that ratifies it gets a tick. Every state that opposes gets a cross. If you get 36 ticks, you win the game. If you get 13 crosses, you lose the game. And so the opposition player is basically just trying to put out as much opposition as possible, or to even stop the 19th Amendment ever being passed in the first place. They're trying to stymie the other player. And so what does that look like? Well, none of these ticks and crosses are on the board for like most of the game until the bill gets passed. And so normally the map is a lot of purple and yellow cubes or these orange ones, and there is a lot of them just off map. So what you're trying to do is you're going to play a card. So this one here, it says, if I play it for this event, place 2 opposition cubes, which are these kind of orange ones, in each of New York and Connecticut. So is that what it says? Yeah. So early on in the game, you're going to put 2 of them in New York, and you're going to put 2 of them in Connecticut, which is right here. I already have one there, so I've got 3 there now. Putting out cubes, okay? Why that's important is because once the 19th Amendment gets signed or gets passed, every state that has 4 cubes on it gets a tick or a cross immediately. So let's put a couple purple ones here. And so what's going to happen is, if this was to be passed right now, this would get a cross immediately, and this would get a tick immediately, or a little check mark, as Americans call it. And so that's the goal, kind of, you're trying to get as much influence out as you can in areas so that if this does pass, it's going to tilt in your favor. And once you get to this phase, once you get your tick or your cross, you can't influence those areas anymore, and then it's just race to pick up all these last states, basically. So, but playing a card for an event, you just do what it says in the event, right? It's really not much more complicated than that. So you're going to add one of your campaigners in the southern region. You're going to receive a bunch of your buttons. This little star icon is a button. So you're going to receive 4 of those, and you're going to add 1 opposition cube in each state in the northeast region, the Midwest, the Atlantic and Appalachia, and the South, or Appalachia, depending on how you want to call it. So that's the start card. That's kind of like how that's game set up, basically. But you're going to play cards alternating back and forth. I'm going to remove 1 cylinder from Congress, so you want to hold on to that until, you know, the suffragists have wasted their time lobbying. Well, Senator Joseph Brown comes along and he kicks 1 off, and then we're going to add 2 opposition in Georgia. Great. So you're building up all of these. Again, you don't have all these ticks and ticks and crosses at the beginning of the game. But you're going to do that, and then the suffragists, they're going to play this one, where they're going to roll 2 8-sided die. And they're going to remove, wow, that was a great roll. They're going to remove 13 opposition cubes anywhere. No more than 2 per state. This is a late game card. Very, very, very strong. But that's the game, is going back and forth, trying to put your cubes in. And when you place cubes into a state that has opposition, so let's say the suffragist wants to put 2 cubes in here, you can't have cubes of opposing sides, so instead of placing 2, you just remove 2. And then on a subsequent turn, if they want to place more, now they can place them. So if you're ever like, I can place 4, you could remove 2 and add 2 of your own, or you could remove 3 and add 1 of your own, you know. But it really, I cannot tell you how much that is the rules of the game, right? There's a few state cards, and those are sorted at the beginning of the game. The first person to ever place 4 cubes in Virginia gets the state card. And the state card gives them this cool ability, which is draw 2 cards from your deck, discard 1, and play the other for its event immediately. And so this you play in addition to your regular strategy card, so it just gives you kind of like an extra free play. And that's what a lot of those state cards do. There is this little spot down here for lingering effects for the turn, lingering effects for the game, and then card effects for this final voting phase. So if no one wins their auto victory conditions by the end of turn 6, you go into final voting, where everything that's left, you just do a roll off. So I'm going to roll a d6, and I rolled a 2, and the suffragists up here, they're going to roll a d6, they roll a 3, and they add 2, so they got a 5. Great. They win, right? It's a bit more random, and it's a bit chaotic at the end, but as long as you put some stuff out, you're probably in a good spot to swing states. You look at something like Florida, cool. It's a total toss-up, right? And so things can go very poorly if you don't plan well for the kind of the final voting. But then it's a case of, can you get the coup de grace before we get to final voting and win, so that you don't have to worry about that, and how much do you commit one way or the other, or do you hedge your bets and maybe go less aggressively towards all of this? it's a really, really interesting dynamic of how much and what you do with it. But generally speaking, that's most of how the game works. You can campaign in a region where you're going to roll some of your D4s, which are wonderful D12s with the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s repeated, and you're going to place, this many in this region and this many in this region. It's really simple, but you can spend your buttons to move. So I'm going to assign my 3 to him, but I'm going to move him over here, and he's going to drop them up here. Great. We're going to remove 1 from there, and we're going to add 2 here. That's our 3. So the currencies and the layers, very simple game, but making it work and trying to do it as efficiently and as quickly as possible, especially as the suffragists, trying to garner as much support as you can and strangle the opposition. A really, really, really interesting kind of puzzle and conundrum to figure out whilst someone is actively trying to remove all of your stuff. And it can be very devastating if they do. So that's kind of how the game works. Really not that complicated. And what we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the board and the beautiful pieces in it, frankly. Yep. Love the dice. I also like that they give you lots of dice.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it would have been really easy for them to, cheap out and give you far fewer dice.
Well, you got 6 4-siders.
Yeah.
I think the most you're ever going to be rolling is...
I think 4 at a time.
Yeah, but it's cool.
But they could have given...
You can spread them around the table, right?
Because if you in theory, the rule book says, one person sits over here and the other one sits over here.
So you might want to... Yeah.
But we wouldn't do that.
Well, I even like the 6-siders. These are just really nice dice. They really are. They're unique.
But yeah, lovely wooden components. Always, if I'm playing a board game, it's nice to have wooden components. It's just fun. It's a tactile element to it. The cards were great as well.
Yeah, it just adds to the enjoyment of the game.
Yeah.
Right? Looking at this board, it's like, oh, that's really an attractive...
Also, when have you ever played with a green tick
check mark
meeple, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
No one's done that.
Or even a red X. I mean, that's pretty dope.
Yeah. Well,
I don't like the red X's.
You can take these and use them as activation markers in OCS.
You can. Or you can use them as tank traps in...
Memoir 44.
Yeah, Memoir 44. There you go. Yeah. But yeah, production's amazing.
Linen finished cards with all the historical pictures on them and little notes at the bottom. It's great for that.
Well, and furthermore, if you dig around in that box, there's a designer notes and there's like an entire pamphlet on that. Always cool. I want to read that. But then totally plays no part in the game.
No.
But they included about 15 pieces of kind of, what would you call that, paraphernalia?
Yeah,
like pamphlets and memos and postcards and thing that just describes whatever.
So that when you're it's like replicas, and some of these are like linen finished.
It's really nice.
Like really cool documents that are all historical bits and pieces.
But it plays no role in the game.
No, this is
right. But it's cool.
This is because I think this is partly designed as a kind of a classroom teaching piece, and these are great little artifacts that you can hand round and you could photocopy for students and things like that.
Very cool.
There's a ton of them, like an absolute ton of them.
Yeah. But that's unique, right?
Yeah.
One of the reasons we play all of these historically focused or historically themed board games and war games is to learn the history.
Yes.
You're going to sit here, you're going to play this, reading the cards, seeing the events. Oh, I remember that person or from history, or, oh, that's who she was. And then reading those and seeing those, it all adds to the atmosphere that you're creating.
This is a great experience from a game standpoint. I think it's also a really great experience from like a tool, educational, teaching standpoint too.
Well, and it was fun to play. It was interesting.
It was fun to play.
The only thing, someone taking the opposition, we don't really care because
I don't.
It's a game. This has no bearing on history, right? It's not going to change anything. You're just playing a game. It's like when we play the Germans or the Nazis. I mean, I don't think about those things.
No.
You're just trying to understand the history.
But
right?
I know for some people that is not their cup of tea.
And that's fine. You can play the Applebot.
Yes, and hobbies should always be to your cup of tea.
Absolutely.
Right? You don't force yourself doing anything you don't want to do when it comes to your hobbies. And
this is a cup of tea, though, I think everybody should at least take a sip of.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
it's
that's
really
true.
interesting and unique.
It's
Yeah.
eminently playable and enjoyable and fun.
Yep.
And it is a really good two-player game. Like,
Yeah.
us going back and forth at each
Was
other was
fantastic.
exactly as rewarding as you would want it to be
Yep.
in a game this kind of quick and easy to learn and on the topic that it is.
And I think the other thing I love about Fort Circle Games is this is now their second game.
Yep.
Right? The first one was Shores of Tripoli.
That's right.
It dealt with that historical period. Very similar production. Beautiful little ship meeples.
The little wooden gold coins.
Yeah. I mean, they had little cubes in it. Beautiful cards, beautiful board, beautiful box. This just follows in that footsteps. And I know they have others coming out. They have one called the Halls of Montezuma that they're working on. I have no idea when it's going to the next step.
No, but they've started showing much more finalized artwork
Well,
of
I've
the
seen
map.
a final
so
box and it's beautiful.
I think that's going to be...
But I'm looking forward to that one. I'm also looking forward to, they have one called like First Tuesday in October. It's about the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I can't remember the designers of that, but I thought Jason Matthews was included in that, and I could be wrong. But really interested in that one as well. They also have a game coming out about managing bat guano.
Guano, that's them?
I think it looks fantastic. It just looks interesting, right? I've never played a game on something like that.
That's like an economical trading type game,
I think it has something
like resources.
Yeah, because guano's a resource, particularly in certain periods of history. It's just really interesting. I think this company is very cool. Kevin's a great guy.
Yes.
Makes great product.
And he is both very active and very accessible on social media as well.
Oh, yeah. He's a great ambassador of board games.
If you have any questions or you want to know more, Tori Brown's also on Twitter as well. Yeah, she will answer any of your questions.
She commented tonight when I posted 4 or 5 tweets. You know, she's like, I'm not rooting for you if you're the opposition. I'm like, that's good because I'm the suffragist. You know, and she was like, yay! It's just fun. But had a great time.
It's always nice when like the designers and developers and publishers are available. And this is a company where they are. You won't have any questions about the rules.
Yeah.
You get to play this and have an interesting time and discuss with them your experiences. And I promise you that they will love that feedback as well.
Yeah, they will. One final comment I want to say, and this is not meant in a negative way. We played another historical board game earlier this fall.
Yes.
I was very much anticipating that game.
Yes.
It looked incredibly interesting on a very unique topic. We played it. I wish I had the experience with that one that I had with this one.
Yes. How good of an experience that we had with this was what I was expecting from that other one.
I would agree 100%.
Not the case, which was a shame.
And I have downloaded the updated rules, and I have looked them over. They are definitely better.
Yes.
So I still think we want to play that with 4 people, but...
I've also read those, and they still have problems.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. But they were better. I thought they were better. Sure. So I don't say that. I just think Fort Circle Games, second game, they've really done a great job.
Knocked it out of the park. They really, really did. And it is worth looking at their games that they have upcoming as well. But Votes for Women from Fort Circle Games. Check this out if this is something you're interested in. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.